welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching the NewsX Eurozone. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that Russia has launched over 700 drones and missiles, including more than 50 missiles in a massive overnight attack on Ukraine. Zelensky has confirmed that while many were intercepted, several strikes hit energy facilities and civilian areas, causing significant damage. Meanwhile, in the massive overnight barrage from Russia on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, reportedly killing one person and injuring 6 children in Zaporizhzhia, Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko has accused Moscow of targeting civilians and power supplies ahead of winter, as Kyiv has urged for stronger air defenses and tougher sanctions. French police have arrested 5 suspects in connection with the $102 million Louvre jewel heist, after 2 of them partially admitted involvement. According to the prosecutor's office, authorities said CCTV blind spots delayed detection of the 4-person burglary. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has rejected calls for an investigation into Finance Minister Rachel Reeves after she admitted failing to obtain a rental license for her South London home, accepting her apology as sufficient, as opposition Conservatives demanded a full inquiry as Reeves faces mounting pressure amid warnings of weakening economy. The centrist D66 party has won the Dutch elections, pulling ahead of Geert Wilders' far-right PVV by just 2,300 votes, with both parties projected to win 26 seats in the 150-seat parliament. D66 leader now looks set to take the lead in forming the next government and could become the Netherlands' youngest prime minister. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban will meet U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington on November 7th to discuss a roadmap for U.S.-Russia meeting and seek exemption from U.S. energy sanctions. The leaders will also finalize cooperation agreements in energy, defense, economy, and finance with the aim of advancing peace talks in Ukraine. Poland has reopened its airports in Radom and Lublin after a temporary closure caused by military aviation activity following Russian strikes in Ukraine. Authorities have said that Polish and Allied aircrafts were scrambled in response as NATO's eastern flank remains on high alert. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun ordered the army to confront any Israeli incursion in the country's south after an Israeli raid killed a municipal worker. Aoun has said that the military must defend Lebanese territory and protect civilians, according to a statement from the presidency in Beirut. Now we start with Ukraine. Residents of Kyiv have taken shelter at metro station during overnight Russian strikes in Ukraine. This comes as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that Russia launched more than 650 drones and over 50 missiles of various types in an overnight attack. According to Ukrainian authorities, the strikes have killed at least 2 people and injured 17 people, including children between 2 to 16 years of age. Let's listen into what some Kyiv residents have said about spending the night in the metro station.
І це не закінчиться, аж поки вся світова спільнота не буде протидіяти Росії. А поки Росія не скаже, що вона агресія. Несе вона агресія.
Звісно, холодно, звісно. Хочеться бути вдома. Я сьогодні вихідна, а взагалі мені на роботу дуже часто зранку. Я хочу спати вдома, а не в метро, і коли мені холодно.
Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry has stated that Russian armed forces have launched a massive strike on Ukrainian industrial complex facilities overnight in response to Ukraine's attacks on civilian targets in Russia. Ukraine's largest private energy producer has stated that the overnight attack was a bad blow to winter power supply readiness of the country. The Russian Defense Ministry has also stated that their forces have taken control of Krasnohirsky in Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia region and Sadov in Kharkiv region. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical expert, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us again. Good to see you. Mark, looking at this, what are we to make of this intensifying attacks from both sides with no talks, no ongoing talks for the ceasefire and no statements coming in from either Europe or Trump?
Asuma, good to be with you.
Thank you.
In many ways, honestly, I find it extremely sad because you and I constantly, we have these discussions where we're reporting on the inch by inch advancement by the Russians. We are then report on, we're seeing reports, some of them saying there's more deaths. We're looking at the drone strikes on either side, from Ukraine, from Russia, and as you pointed out, the attacks on energy infrastructure as it's coming up to winter time, which can be very, very, very extreme. We've also already seen the amount of deaths on the Russian side of 1 million and many hundreds of thousands on the Ukrainian side with all the devastation. There has been a Russian comment that says, you know, to the Trump administration, which is to stop backing European sanctions and to actually let's get down to negotiation to end this war. And we also have to be very mindful again of the fact that in February 2022, Russia then invaded a sovereign country. Now the complexities of the history of that, when we're talking about Kyiv, we remember that was at one time the Russian capital. We also have to bear in mind all the intricacies of relationships between said people within their country. Remember Ukraine then, when the wall came down in 1989. And then we have to remember in 1974 when the then Clinton administration says you get rid of your nuclear weapons, we will then back you. Why am I saying all this? It's the history is deeply complex, and it's a history that we also must continually to remind ourselves. And the other thing as well, there's nothing against you, Asuma, of course, but if we're constantly coming on, not where no one is willing, we need to see the parties coming to the table to end this, and that is what we want. Cynically, within certain aspects of this, we have to ask how serious people are in actually ending this. Asuma.
Yes, and Mark, yesterday we also saw in it's very sad that we have to keep discussing in this topic and seeing this not end at all. And yesterday we saw President Putin announce their new advancement in a drone system, which was a submarine, nuclear submarine drone system. What do you make of this? Do you think it's just information warfare over here, and he's trying to buff over here?
In my own humble opinion, of course, we have to remember that the Russians are extremely good at propaganda, but they also have technology, and they have the technology and the weapons to then threaten Europe. That's also what we have to then bear in mind. We also have to remember that this is having a huge effect on their economy as well. And then with other economies in Europe not doing very well, you could cynically say, well, one of the things is we'll just not end this because of an escalation of a war may solve a few things for people, but it's in the end it's that awful thing where we see the fact that people are killed, and we see the devastation then of the outworkings of that across Europe. But propaganda, that is the big thing. It's the big thing on both sides. Remember, not long ago, at one point, there was the discussion about putting the Tomahawk stuff into that military hardware into the theatre of war in regard to Ukraine, and for the Ukrainians to then be able to threaten Russia with that. It's the escalation. But I come back to it, as you have just said, We need people around the table, not just talking about exchanging prisoners like they did in August in Turkey, but to actually say, how do we end this? We have to discuss the invasion, the 20% of Ukrainian land taken, go through history, but also to say this has to end because people are dying. And as you pointed out, people are then going off to the metro to then survive yet another drone attacks and where those drones are going. When people say, no, we're not targeting civilian content, civilian, but we are then targeting the energy infrastructure.
Yes,
Asuma.
indeed. We will be eyeing that. Thank you very much, Mark Sutherland, for always joining us and sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now we move on and we stay in the region. Following his party's strong performance in the October 29th election, Rob Jetten now stands on the verge of making history as the youngest and first openly LGBTQ+ Prime Minister of the Netherlands. The Netherlands, known for its progressive values and strong protections for LGBTQ rights, was the first country to legalize same-sex marriage 25 years ago. A landmark has achieved under a D66-led government back then. Shifting our focus back to the Dutch polls, Jetten, in his campaign, expanded his message beyond D66's traditional social liberal focus on climate change and education. He tackled divisive national issues such as immigration and the housing crisis, winning over voters who had previously leaned towards right-wing parties. Meanwhile, some locals have reacted to these results. Let's listen in.
The far right, the populists are getting a little bit back to the middle, so I think that's good. With the outcome, it's quite difficult to form a coalition, which we need, of course, as a stable country to run the country in a stable way.
Mixed feelings, because it's more complicated, because it's more even now between the D66 and the PVV. But I'm happy the PVV, I'm happy the PVV didn't get as much votes as they did by the last elections.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Sander van Hoorn. He's a former EU correspondent, joins us live from Amsterdam. Thank you very much, Sander, for joining us again. Good to see you. As yesterday we were talking about Geert Wilders' far-right PVV. However, they have lost by only 2,300 votes. Instead, the centrist D66 party has won. Were you surprised? Do you think the voters are shifting? What do you think they're shifting towards now?
Well, I'm going to bring you up to speed with the latest news, because
Yes.
the latest news is that the PVV party of Geert Wilders is actually bigger than Rob Jetten's D66. And it's a margin of, I'm going to read it out in full, 1,984 votes. So that is indeed too close to call. And that's why both party leaders have not yet proclaimed their victory, because some votes still have to be counted. And it will take until the last vote is counted to proclaim a winner, because the margin between both parties is extremely slim. Only less than 2,000 votes. Imagine that.
Yes. Wow, thank you for updating that, Sander. Thank you very much. Sander, can you tell us who is this leader, very charming Rob Jetten? What more can you tell us about this individual?
Well, he's young. He's not even 40. That would make him the youngest prime minister, if elected, of the Netherlands. He basically opposed Geert Wilders in every fathomable way. And that gained him a lot of votes from, I think, other left-leaning parties that wanted to break with the nationalist trend in Holland. So he has had a slogan, a bit like Barack Obama, yes, we can indeed, was his slogan. So against the negativity that he said was coming out of Geert Wilders' party and other right-wing parties. And that's why a lot of analysts think right now that he took actually some seats of left-leaning voters that more voted against Wilders than they voted for Rob Jetten. But it is this positivity, also an active campaign on social media like TikTok, that made him this big, because they gained a lot of seats. Whether they will be the biggest or not, then they will be second by only a slim margin. So that's quite something that he showed.
And what is his campaign transformation, including you've mentioned he used a lot of TikTok or social media. What does this tell us about changing expectations of Dutch voters?
Well, I think Dutch voters are split. Geert Wilders wrote an anti-immigration ticket, and then still, if you talk to people, one of the bigger issues in the Netherlands, not so much only the fact that many foreigners come in, according to them, but also the pressure that puts on the housing in the Netherlands. Housing is a big theme for everybody. The left-leaning parties, including Rob Jetten's D66, have said that it's only a small fraction of the people that get houses that are actually immigrants. So let's face the real problems we have to build. Rob Jetten famously promised 10 new cities in a lake in the middle of the Netherlands. So that's a different approach, and that is, I think, what has polarized Dutch society right now. The people that want to continue on like the way we had before, a multi-party coalition government in the middle, and the people that still want different solutions, a full stop on immigration, stuff like that, the things Geert Wilders proclaimed.
And Sanders, building on that, yesterday we were talking that Geert Wilders is kind of segregated out of coalition while he looks for. Do you think he can still find a coalition? And given the Netherlands' tradition of coalition governments, how might Jetten's optimistic, yes, we can, and indeed, message translate into the tough compromises that governing would require?
Well, the biggest party is kind of relative in the Netherlands because we have a 150-seat parliament, and the biggest party, whether that's the PVV or D66, will make something like 26, 27 seats. So they will need to govern probably with 3 other parties. Now, the rule is that the biggest party, whether it's by 1 vote or more, gets to get the first turn at forming a coalition government. So if Geert Wilders' party turns out to be the biggest one, he is the first one to try to form a coalition government. Then we will have to see, for example, the conservative liberal VVD party, if they stick to their word that they are not going to govern with Geert Wilders' PVV. But that is something that is not fixed. That is something we will have to see. And only if the biggest party does not succeed, then the runner-up gets to try to form a coalition government. But it still may well be that D66 turns out bigger. It's only a 2,000 vote margin right now. We're still waiting for part of the results from the biggest city in the Netherlands, Amsterdam, but also the former colonies, Bonaire, St. Eustatius, and Saba between Venezuela and America. We still have some official Dutch communities there. Those votes have not been counted yet. And even the mail-in votes from the people abroad, estimate of like some 90,000 people that voted by mail, they have yet to be counted. And expect those results maybe early next week. And that's why the official body proclaiming the results may only end up proclaiming the definite result next Friday. So Friday, a week from now. So it can really be exciting up until that point in the Netherlands.
Yes, we will be eyeing that. Thank you very much, Sander Verhoeven, for joining us and sharing that insight all the way from Netherlands. Now we stay in the region. A German foreign minister, Johann Wadephul, is on his first visit to Syria to meet representatives of the new government, including President Ahmed al-Sharaa. In a statement released by German Foreign Ministry, Wadephul has noted that the overthrowing of the Assad's regime, the people of Syria have entered a new era. Wadephul and a German parliament delegation will meet President Ahmed al-Sharaa and Syrian Foreign Minister Assad al-Shaibani before traveling to Lebanon and Bahrain. Syria's relations with the West have warmed, with the United States lifting sanctions and European governments developing closer ties. However, Syria still sees continued unrest with clashes between different ethnic groups in their soil. Now we welcome back Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical expert, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mark, for staying with us. Mark, looking at this, what does Germany's engagement with Syria's new government signals, and can improved diplomatic relations coexist with ongoing ethnic unrest inside of Syria?
It wasn't that long ago that there was a huge price on the new leader of Syria's head. We have to remember also, as I constantly use that statement, that that particular individual, Jelani, has a terrorist background, ISIS background. We have to remember that. It seems as though that Western countries have actually forgotten that. We have seen many, and including, I just wonder what the Trump administration is thinking in regard to that as well. We have to remember this, go through what has actually happened. We also have to remember the clans where there's been the attack on the Druze community there, on Christians there within southern Syria. I have seen some of that footage, and so maybe so have you, where this is outrageous behavior. And then of course we then saw Israel coming to the defense of the Druze community there, because there are many Druze community within Israel. They were the only country to then do that. It's complex, but I have to ask that question. Why are Western governments, leaders, we've seen that over here, we've seen other
Yes.
people, ex-politicians from here going over to actually do that, to then engage, knowing someone's past. But then
Yes.
someone would say to me, but we could look at the past history of who we've dealt with, like Saddam Hussein, for argument's sake, where on the one hand you are selling him weapons, and then you are then supporting him
Mark,
in regard
Mark, I
a
wanted
war
to.
against Iran. But
Yes.
Asuma, sorry,
Yes,
go.
Mark, I wanted to just follow up. What do you think is in Western, including Germany's interest in, trying to shove it off or ignore Ahmad al-Shara's past? Like you just mentioned, it was not a long time ago that he had a bounty set on his head.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in many ways, I would like to be able to sit these people down and ask what is going through their head. You then because we've seen a reconfiguring that is going on politically in that area. We only have to look at Turkey and Erdogan's involvement in regard to the overthrowing of Assad, and of course, Russia. The Assad was then leading on the Russians to then to back his regime in the past. We've seen the awful events in Aleppo, etc. I ask the same question, but it is also about geopolitical, the change in the landscape that's going on. But as I constantly say, we have to be mindful of history. And suddenly we seem to be welcoming a terrorist in. Just because someone's put on a suit doesn't mean that they have then changed their ideology. Maybe they have then switched in how they are then pushing forward their ideology and their wars. Asuma.
Yes, indeed, we'll be eyeing that. Thank you very much, Mark Sutherland, for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Now we have a breaking news coming in from India. A major security scare has unfolded in Mumbai's Powai area on Thursday after 15 to 20 children were held hostage inside a local acting studio in broad daylight. The incident took place at RA Studio, where acting classes and auditions are regularly held. According to police, a man identified as an employee of the studio and a YouTuber allegedly locked the children inside during ongoing auditions. Officials say nearly 100 children had come for auditions, and while most were allowed to leave, around 15 to 20 were forcibly confined. A massive police operation was launched with officers surrounding the premises and eventually rescuing all the children safely. Authorities are now questioning his motive. Now we move on to Turkey. A 7-story apartment building in Turkey's northwestern city of Gebze has collapsed early Wednesday, trapping a family of 5 under the rubble and killing 4 of them. According to Deputy Interior Minister Mehmet Aktaş, the cause of the collapse is still unknown to the authorities, but sources suggest that it might be related to nearby metro construction. Experts have long warned that Turkey's failure to enforce modern construction codes poses significant risks in earthquake-prone areas. Shopkeepers who rented the ground floor are currently questioned to determine whether they dismantled supporting columns for more space, a common practice in the region despite severe penalties. Now we move on to Europe. In Spain's Valencia region, the citizens have once again erupted in anger, but this time at a state memorial for victims of the country's deadliest natural disaster in decades. Regional leader Carlos Mazon was booed and called a murderer and coward as he arrived for the ceremony marking 1 year since the catastrophic floods that killed more than 230 people. Mazon has faced mounting public outrage and repeated calls to resign over what critics call a botched response before and during and after the disaster. Protesters say victims were abandoned and justice still remains out of reach. Despite the fury, Mazon has refused to step down, insisting that his administration did everything possible during the crisis. Let's listen in to some of the attendees of the memorial.
Hoy es el primer día que tengo muchas ganas de llorar en todo este año porque fue tanto lo que perdimos y vivimos esos días que era difícil de procesar como emocionalmente. Por lo demás bien, estoy viva.
Bueno, me parece necesario, pero me parece que se tiene que hacer conforme han pedido los principales afectados, que son los familiares de los fallecidos, que no se han cansado de repetir que no quieren que vaya el presidente de la Generalitat porque no lo reconocen como tal.
Que no podemos entender que nos dejaran abandonados de esa manera, y antes, durante y después, ¿no? Y el gobierno valenciano, bueno, es totalmente responsable de todo esto, porque son los que nos tenían que proteger y nos dejaron desprotegidos, abandonados, y encima nos están dejando como si fuéramos, pues eso, mierda para ellos y sobre todo para las personas que murieron y sus familiares.
Now we move on to Asia. South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Hyun has stated that member countries of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum are close to reaching a consensus on a joint declaration at this year's annual summit in South Korea. Speaking at a joint briefing after chairing a ministerial meeting to prepare for the Leaders' Summit, the country's trade minister noted that most members agree there are shared challenges, including rising protectionist barriers. South Korea's foreign minister and trade minister has reacted to the situation. Let's listen in to what they have said.
정상선언의 성과 문서들이 채택되는 토요일 리트리트에 맞춰 공동성명도 타결될 것으로 기대합니다.
글로벌 통상 환경이 여러 가지 일방주의적인 어떤 무역 보호 조치, 그리고 관세, 비관세 장벽, 그리고 또 여러 가지 예측 불가능한 그런 경제와 안보 이슈의 융합, 이런 것 때문에 많은 그런 도전을 가지고 있다라는 그런 부분에는 대부분의 APEC 회원국들이 공감을 표시를 했습니다.
Meanwhile, APEC is a 21-member forum that accounts for around 50% of global trade and 61% of world GDP, serves as a platform for promoting free and open trade across the Asia-Pacific region. The forum failed to adopt a joint declaration in both 2018 and 19, making this year's potential breakthrough particularly significant. And that's a wrap on the NewsX Eurozone. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.